Okay, so I want to go over a few things, but in order to understand those things the way I intend for you to understand them, I have to go over some things first. So I'm going to go over some things that will explain some things. What I want to go over is citizenship and jurisdiction as pertains to the United States. Some people out there are saying, well, you have to start with your state and work your way up. You have to start with your state communities and your boards and your councils and all this kind of stuff. But in my opinion, that doesn't really do a lot of good for you if you don't understand your rights, if you don't understand the constitutions, if you don't understand the relationships between people and governments. If you don't understand the legal aspects of things, or even what the word legal means, it's going to be really hard for you to go into these council meetings or these boards or wherever you want to go and assert yourself on firm footing, because you don't know where to start on the firm. You don't know where the firm footing is. Okay, so you don't know what to stand on. Yeah, we can say a lot of things like, oh well, I have my rights and my constitutional rights and the Bill of Rights, but I think we need to understand and know a little bit more than just some words or phrases that have been thrown out for 50 years now or more that really haven't gotten us anywhere. So what I would like to do is just sort of slowly roll into some more things, some more legal aspects, some more of the jurisdictions, the relationships between federal and state, between federal, state, and state, between federal people and state people, between citizen and military. Okay, so when we're talking about a citizen of the United States, for the most part, we all believe we are a citizen of the United States and that we're all a part of the federal government, and the federal government has some type of jurisdiction over all of us. And my purpose in this channel has been many, and among those was to dispel some of the myths. Now, over time, the Constitution and its interpretation, not its administration, has been expanded and expanded and expanded, and just keeps expanding and expanding, and it will continue to do this until we start understanding things at a higher level or beyond just the regular stuff that we've been saying for the last 50 years or more. And then maybe we can get it to contract. Okay, so one of the things that we have to understand are some of the things that it says in the federal Constitution, because that's the thing that you hear people quoting all the time. They rarely quote their state constitution. They don't know the difference between state of Texas and Republic of Texas. They think that when Texas ratified the federal Constitution that the Republic was no more, and I've been showing over time how that's not the case. So when I say that it's expanded and expanded over time, when we start looking at the federal Constitution, the Constitution of the United States for the states, the United States of America, which says in the preamble, we have to understand that there's two jurisdictions in that federal Constitution. There's an exclusive and there's a like. Okay, exclusive is Article 1, Section 8, Clause 17, is the seat of government. So the seat of government, even though it was originally made up of some states or parts of some states, it was out of the states. So it is an island in the states, but the states had no right to make any reservation of rights when that land was given to the federal government to create the seat. Okay, so that is the only place where the federal government has exclusive legislative jurisdiction, meaning no one has reserved or could reserve, no state could reserve any rights over that place. So it's like a safe place, right? Nobody has any rights over it except for the legislatures, the legislative body, the Congress of the United States. Not even the states. Not even the states together has jurisdiction over that place. They can pass laws to give money to the seat of government so that the seat of government can send money out to its other places in the states. Those other places in the states only have like authority, and the states were able to reserve some rights over those places. So you have military posts called fortifications in all the states. Every state legislator had to individually agree to those lands, and then they had to give up jurisdiction over that portion of land for lawmaking purposes over those particular pieces of land, those forts, those posts. But they had the right to reserve, because it's a contract, they had the right to reserve some rights over those lands. So they had the right to reserve some lawmaking authority over those lands, as long as it didn't conflict with the Constitution, the federal laws, right? So when the federal government then passes legislation, which it can do outside of the Constitution, it can't interfere with the state stuff, and it can't interfere with the constitutional stuff. And then the states have to agree to it, and the individual state has to agree to it. And the reason why is because in the Articles of Confederation, it says that the states each individually remain free, sovereign, and independent with all rights, powers, and jurisdictions not given up to the United States in Congress assembled for constitutional purposes, the things that were agreed to in the Constitution. Now, the states each individually ratified the federal Constitution, but the states were allowed to make reservations over those bodies inside their territories for certain purposes. So some of those purposes would be to go and get someone, like a military person came off the military post, committed a crime, and went back to the military post. No matter what crime it is, it could be rape, murder, theft, vandalism, anything. They were allowed, some states reserved the right to go back to that federal land and get that person, or drop off a summons, or whatever. Every state could have been a little bit different. Some states may not have reserved any rights. Some states may have reserved all their rights as long as it didn't interfere with federal works, which is constitutional things, military things, right? But the seat of government is different. The seat of government, the states were not allowed to interfere with anything. They weren't allowed to reserve any rights, because all that land was privately owned and then either donated or sold by contract to the United States. So what happened to all those people that were on those lands donated to the United States to create the seat of government? Okay, this is something I've been talking about a little bit here, but over a long period of time, because the reason why I haven't gone into it a lot is because it seems to be really confusing to people. They can't seem to understand that, one, they're not a federal citizen, they're a state citizen. And two, you can be a federal citizen but not a member of the military and be on a military post. So a few days ago, I was listening to Gregory Mannarino, and he was saying, you just got to repeat things over and over and over and over again. So I'm sure he was just talking in general, and it applies to everybody in general, but I took it like, yeah, he's right. I've got to start just repeating things over and over and over again. So that's what I'm going to kind of do as far as federal citizenship goes, because there's so much of it that people don't understand. And there's so much of it I don't understand. Just the other day, someone had commented, hey, and don't forget to look at this part of the Constitution, which talks about territories. And I was like, I totally missed that. I just went right over my head. I focus in on so much of certain things that I forget to look at other things, or forget to think about other things that I look at and how they apply. So exclusive authority, exclusive jurisdiction over the seat of government, meaning nobody has any right to make any claims, to make any lawmaking. Nobody has any lawmaking power over the seat of government. It's just for the United States. And the United States is the only agency, if you want to call it that, that can make laws for the seat of government. So what happened to those people there? Well, they became, I guess, federal citizens. They were no longer state citizens. So we have definitely, without a doubt, state citizens and federal citizens. You can be a federal citizen and not be a member of the federal government. Well, how does that happen? Okay, so this is section 19, and I'll post all these online, okay, including the front of this book, so you can see where I got this from. Subsection 19, transfer of citizenship on cession of territory. So in 1805, this is what it says. Snap that. Do a snap of that. A screenshot, whatever. The inhabitants of the District of Columbia ceased to be citizens of the states. Now it uses plural because that whole area, seat of government, covers, two states or whatever. Two states of Virginia and Maryland, respectively, by its separation from those states. So it separated itself from those states. Why? Because the United States, being the seat of government, has Article 1, Section 8, Clause 17, exclusive legislative jurisdiction. Now, this is what Eisenhower talks about in his reports that he put a committee together to write these reports. They did this whole forensic investigation, and they went to the attorney generals of all the states and they said, send us all your information. They sent all the information. These handful of guys, maybe 5 guys, wrote these 2 reports that are each this big each. 2 volumes back in 1952 and 1953. Eisenhower told them to do this, and they did it rather quickly, but they said they went through all the stuff from the states, and they found that what I'm telling you, basically, that you have state citizens, you have federal citizens, and then the federal government has expanded and expanded and expanded. If not in reality, then in our minds, through propaganda, through the education system. And in that way, they've been able to sort of do prize law, right? Prize law is when you capture something and then you get to keep it as your prize. That's piracy stuff. But it's an actual legal phrase. You can look it up, prize law. So they've kind of captured us through propaganda, through the miseducation system. And they've brought us in under them. And since they can't do it in reality, they can't do it according to the laws, this is where they start asking you to sign contracts. You have to sign here to get a driver's license. You have to sign here to get a birth certificate. You have to sign here to pay taxes. You have to sign all this, sign. It's because they can't make you do it because they don't have the authority to do it. They don't have actual sovereign power to make you do it, because the Constitution doesn't say what most people believe it says. Okay, so we're not citizens of the United States, we're citizens of the state. And when you go to work for one of these companies that require you to state that you're a citizen of the United States, these companies are basically contractors working for the United States. And then we're subcontractors. So they're prime contractors, we're subcontractors, and we're all agreeing that we work on federal lands when in fact we don't. And working on federal lands makes you a federal taxpayer. So if you were to go on a military post and you're just driving around, hanging out, like, oh yeah, this is cool, we get to see the military post. They do allow visitors and guests on sometimes. You have to go through a process. It can be extensive. It depends on what the military post is and what they do there. There's restricted areas you won't be able to go to, but just generally drive around. You might say, okay, this is cool. And you might come across a McDonald's on post. Well, that McDonald's has agreed to certain stipulations, which is the things in the Constitution and also the things particular to that military post. So if you're driving around and you're like, oh, I'm hungry, I want to go eat at McDonald's, and you pull your car over and you go in, all those people working at McDonald's are to some extent federal people, because they, being on the federal military post, are taxpayers. So McDonald's is contracted to work on the military post, and each of their employees must be taxpayers. They have to sign all the papers that you and I sign off a military post when we think we're just going to work and this is the way it is and this is how it's all done and this is the way it's always been done and blah, 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 blah. But that's not actually true. We, if we're not working on a military post, are not federal taxpayers. We are civilians. We're off military post. We're not citizens of the United States. We don't owe a tax. We don't have to comply with their laws. We're supposed to be in our republics and commonwealths. These corporations that come onto our land, if they were to come onto our land, the situation would be completely different. They would be probably under common law, which is republic. And I think that's why we don't see law, and a friend brought this up to me, we don't see laws under the Republic of Texas because they're already written. They're the common laws. So they don't need to go and pass them in Republic of Texas or whatever state you're in, Commonwealth or whatever. They don't have to pass the laws because they're already passed. They're already common laws. The only thing they've really done is line out counties and establish property taxes, what the rate is and all that stuff. So we're looking at two situations here. We're looking at the federal and we're looking at the state. And if you're federal, you're a federal person. If you're a state, you're a state person. Okay, so if we're contractors working on a military post, all those laws apply to those people. But because we have corporations registering to do business as if they were a contractor on a military post, even though they're not on a military post, they believe, or whether willingly or unwillingly, they believe that they're supposed to follow all those federal laws as if they were on a federal land, a piece of federal land somewhere. And it's just not the case. And so we are not, when we go to get a job and these corporations are registered and they, with the federal government, and they say, well, we have to pay federal taxes, so we have to charge you a federal tax. What they're doing is misapplying the laws. So they're applying laws off federal land that are supposed to be applied to the people on federal lands, to the contractors working on federal military posts, okay? This is the way it works. And I worked, remember, I told you guys, I worked for the Department of Defense. I worked for accumulated about 16 years. And as part of my job enforcing regulations, one of the things that I did was to review contracts for people wanting to do work on post. My job was to review it for safety and different hazards and, fire safety, occupational safety, health, environmental issues and things like that. But I was also able to see these contracts, and I was able to see how things worked and the whole process of it all. So I know what I'm telling you. I just need you to know what I'm telling you. Okay, so transfer of citizenship on cession of territory. So I kind of want to add something in right here. It may be like a little bit off topic. It's not really off topic. It has to do with taxes, but you recall how I've said that if you don't work for a corporation and you're just out there minding your business, doing your business or whatever, whether you've registered it with the state or not, a possible remedy for them stealing your income, I wouldn't call it income, the product of your labor, I think that I would call it that, your ownership of your body and your ownership of your own energy and your capacity to make money. I think your remedy would be Texas Jurisprudence, 3rd edition, 1 general, subsection 1 statehood. The Republic of Texas exists. The Republic of Texas was abrogated only insofar as it conflicted with federal authority. Now, people will go back and say, well, yeah, but the federal government can tax you. No, the federal government can tax the states, and then the federal government can tax the people on the federal lands, like McDonald's and McDonald's employees, or any contractor that comes and works on post and receive federal money. They have to pay some of that back. They have to pay the federal tax. In the old days, and I've read a lot of officers' manuals and military manuals from the oldest I can find from like the 1790s, early 1800s, up until the Civil War, because at the Civil War, that's when things really took a turn and things changed a lot. And then government was expanded a bunch, like way outside of the scope of the federal Constitution. And that was thanks to Lincoln and the railroads. Really, it was all about land theft. Now, I'm not saying that we should have slavery or anything like that. I think every human being deserves some, respect, just for the mere fact that they're a higher level conscious being. So I'm not saying anything, like we should go back to slavery or anything like that. I'm just saying that the Civil War was on the surface propagandized as being because the federal government had no slavery stuff anyway. There was no slavery in federal government, so they didn't need to come off federal lands. Anyway, it was all just a land grab, and that's been talked about a lot. And there's a book, The Problem with Lincoln, and I forget the guy's name, but it's a really good book, and how basically Lincoln just did whatever he wanted. Now, Lincoln also had lands that he wanted the railroads to buy, and he wanted the railroads to buy it like at an exorbitantly overpriced dollar amount. So he was hoping to cash in on what he did for the railroads, which is basically to decimate the South, take over the lands, sell it to the railroads, and then use the military to capture, prize law, the governments of the southern states that were ceding back to the Union. Now, the Confederation. To cede back to the Confederation, all they really need to do was kick out the military, take back their military posts, all the military lands and everything that they had given up to the federal government to have them create a national military. They just had to take them back. And so when they started taking them back, then of course the federal government got really mad and came in and just took over the capitals. So that these are the people's governments. Okay, so the inhabitants of the District of Columbia ceased to be citizens of the states of Virginia and Maryland, respectively, by its separation from those states. Now that's exclusive legislative jurisdiction over the seat of government. The rest of the military post and all the other lands was was like authority because each state had the right to make some reservations, some legislative reservations of power over those states, because the states didn't give up the lands completely. They gave them up for military works. So, okay. So let's see. Why are they doing what they're doing? And how is it that they've captured us? So they've captured us by going outside the law. They've captured us by going outside the Constitution. They propagandized to us. They took over the schools. They did all these things that caused us to not understand. And it happened over a long period of time. Rockefeller was a very patient person, as well as many other people. And they've done this over a long period of time. And you can do some really interesting things to people's minds if you do it slowly over a period of time. So one of the other things that I saw in the law library is, over the years I've been looking for this a real clear and concise definition to the word legal. So legal doesn't really always comply with the natural law, and so I kind of wonder, well, what's going on here? Why doesn't legal comply with the natural law? It's supposed to, but it doesn't always. So what is legal? What does legal mean? So legal, when I look at this book in the law library, it's West's Thesaurus and Dictionary. It's just West's Thesaurus and Dictionary. It has a definition, not really a definition of legal. So you can go look up legal and it'll say blah, 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 blah. It's just babble, rhetoric, drivel, whatever. So here it says legal, required, permitted, or involving the law. Okay, so what that means is that it conforms to the natural law. So the law is the natural law. Everything that's made law is supposed to conform to the natural law. And by the law, I think we mean common law or natural law. Okay, so it says it is legal to demonstrate. Okay, so it's okay, you can do it, because it doesn't ask you to do something impossible, because no law can ask you to do something impossible. It's authorized. It's authorized because it's possible to do it, and it's okay in nature, and it's okay in common law. It's permissible. It's within the law. So you have legal and you have law, just like you have federal and you have state. You have military, you have civilian. Okay, so it's permissible. It's within the law. It's okay to do it. So they've legalized it because it's okay to do, and it conforms to the law, which is different. Legal's over here, law's over here. Within the law, licit, proper, allowable, ordered, decreed. Okay, because only people under contract to serve someone else can be ordered by them. So we don't have involuntary servitude in this country. And that's one of the amendments, unless you're in prison. And involuntary servitude is like the draft. So they tell you have to sign the card at the age of 18, but isn't that involuntary servitude? If you don't want to, and you don't want to be drafted because you don't believe in the war that they're promoting, then you're forced involuntarily. That's involuntary servitude. They couldn't even do that during the Revolutionary War, because one of the things that the people who were part of the Revolutionary War complained about was that they couldn't get these farm boys and these young men to come and fight with them. For one, they had no shoes, no socks, no guns, and it was a big problem. They weren't going to walk all this way to fight a war with people that they didn't have a problem with, and they couldn't force them to. But nowadays they tell us we have to sign this paper. The men do, at the age of 18, have to sign a paper so that they can be drafted to go to war. Well, if I have to sign it, aren't I then giving you my permission to draft me? So if I don't sign it, you can't draft me. And they say, well, you have to sign it. Well, wait, why do I have to sign it? Okay, if you can draft me, you don't need my signature on a piece of paper. And it doesn't matter all the weird stuff people come up with. Well, it's just because your age and blah, blah, blah. It doesn't matter. There are higher points, higher laws, higher common sense. And then there's all the other bullshit that people say. If you have to sign it, then it's not something that they can just force on you. If you don't sign it, they can't make you do it. But they tell you you have to sign it, and then you sign it, and then they can make you do it because you signed it. But you wouldn't have signed it if you didn't think you have to, but you did sign it. So these are contracts. Under this definition, it says a lot of other stuff. It says approved within the bounds, commissioned, constitutional, prescribed, sanctioned, mandated, valid, ordained, rightful, juridical, judicial, jurisprudential, forensic. Okay. And then the antecedent, or the opposite is unlawful. Okay, so legal age. So this is what I want you to pay attention to. So legal age. What is it when you're, what does it mean to be of legal age? I know you're thinking, well, you're 18 now, your age of majority. No, that's not what this says. This says legal age. The age at which a person acquires the capacity to make contracts or enter legal relations, not end. These are the same thing. Two things said, or make contracts or enter legal relations, because legal relations are contracts. They're the same, or, not and. Not two different things. You can do this and you can do this, but you could do this or this. You can enter legal relations or sign contracts. So you can sign a contract, but you can also enter a legal relationship, a contractual relationship, not signing something, okay? So if they have a war, or let's say they don't have a war yet. Let's say you want to go into the military. And so you go and you sign a contract and you take an oath and you get paid and you get issued your bag full of stuff, your uniforms, whatever. You do all your medical stuff, you pass everything, and you go into the military and you start working and you start getting paid. So you signed a contract for that. There's another type of legal relations. I'm here to help. Okay, I'm going to show up, and you're gonna, let me fight. If there's the enemies in my backyard, I'm gonna shoot at them. And once I start shooting at them, whether I sign a contract or not, I'm an enemy combatant to them. They're gonna shoot back. I'm no longer acting as a civilian. I'm acting as a militant. I'm not in the basement hiding. I'm standing at the window shooting. I'm an enemy combatant. I've acted in a legal way as a contract, right? That's a little bit of a weird, I'm sure somebody can find some holes in that analogy. But my point is, the legal age is the age at which you are responsible enough to sign your contracts, to make legal relations, marriage, or joining the military, or being responsible for land, buying land, and these kind of things. Okay, so once you're not that age and you're doing stuff, and somebody says, well, he's only 16, he's not really of the age to even do this kind of stuff. He can't be really held responsible for what he's done because he's not mature. He's not the legal age. So let's say you're 16 and you go and you buy some land and you pay cash for this land, and then you find out that you didn't get the land that you thought you were getting, and you go to ask for your money back, and the guy's like, no, we had an agreement. Even though we didn't sign contracts, we had an agreement. And then you can go to the authorities, and the authorities like, he's 16. He's not even the right age to make contracts. Okay, so legal age, the age at which your capacity to make contracts or enter legal relations. Okay, so legal relations are contracts. So what does the government do? The government acts outside of its sovereign power, arbitrarily, not with proper authority, and it has all these things that they're doing, all these titles that they're writing, all these public laws that they're putting into these titles. These titles aren't passed properly into law because they're contractual, okay? Because When you get the license, it's a contract and you agree to all the terms of the contract. When you go to work for one of these corporations that are claiming to be a government contractor, by the simple fact that they're registered as doing business in the United States and not in the Republic of Texas or whatever, they're assigned a different set of rules that are not common law rules, they're contracts. And so you have to sign all these papers. You have to agree to pay Social Security, you have to agree to pay federal income tax, you have to agree to all of these other things that that we're not actually required to do. I mean, unless you just want to work for them. So again, these are corporations and businesses, and they're contracted with the federal government to funnel money to the federal government, to the seat of government, where they have exclusive legislative jurisdiction, meaning nobody can have any power over what they do or what they say. The only thing, this kind of takes power away from the states, because the only place they're supposed to get money from is the states. So the states, when they come together in a Congress, it's called the United States of America in Congress, and they're supposed to give money to the federal government, and that's how they control it. But what the federal government has done is decided, well, we're just going to let people we're just going to let all the corporations contract with us. And wherever they are in the world, if they are registered to do business with us, they're contracted with us, and they agree to all the federal laws, and they agree to tax all their employees and charge them Social Security and all this other stuff. And then they agree to all these other contracts, which is federal benefits and blah, 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 on and on and on, right? And then we're just going to do it this way. And that's what they're doing. And so they offer these great incentives to become employees or subcontractors of these prime contractors, which are the various corporations and businesses registered to do business with the United States. Now, people say, well, we registered because we have tax incentives. Well, you're paying way more in tax by registering with the United States than you would be if you were just working with the Commonwealths and the republics, where it would be very low tax and it would be very minimal, and then the employees, us, the regular people, would have more rights. And that's really the name of the game, is to give us less rights and more obligations to for them to take money from us. So on the one hand, I kind of understand this, because in other countries, some of the wealthiest countries with the biggest militaries, they have a right to just tax their people, because they're a different form of government. And so they tax their people whatever they want. And so they can afford to build up their militaries and all this stuff. But in this country, the original intent of the founders was to keep government small and to only defend ourselves, basically, against enemies, foreign and domestic. And so that made our sphere of enemies very, very small. They would have to come all the way over here and attack us. And we wouldn't need necessarily a huge military for that. Now, as technology advances and stuff, we really need a bigger, stronger military to keep up with the other places that can attack us the way they do. So I'm not necessarily saying that it's a bad system, but it's a system that is less freedom and more tyranny. So it's gotten so out of hand. I mean, you all know what's going on in Washington. I don't have to tell you that. You can see it. And, people are infatuated with Trump and Elon Musk and Kennedy and the things that they're doing. And it's like, that's all I hear all the time. And it's still not the way the founders intended. No matter how much you love it or like it or whatever, it's still not the way the founders intended this government to be. They intended the federal government to be small. And I don't really know if it would be better if the system were different, but it would definitely be different, and we would be more free. So that's what I have to say about this. Unless you're on federal land, okay, that's something else I need to talk about. State citizenship versus federal citizenship. You may say, okay, but you've been telling us that if you're on federal lands and you're a federal citizen and the Congress and you have to be a member of the military and all this stuff. Okay, so you can be a federal citizen and not be a member of the military. So you can be in the military and be a member of the military and be a citizen of the United States. You can be the wife of a member of the military, like, because I'm thinking back in the old days, this is how they wrote it, and become a federal citizen by marriage, but not be a member of the military. So right now there's military posts and they're all over the world. And there's, let's just say men, to keep things, simple, men all over these military posts, and they want to have wives and they want to have children, but they're required, the government is required to have so many people living on the military posts. So if you're off a military post and there's an emergency and there's a breakout, a war or whatever, and you have to get onto the military post, let's say that you can't get onto the military post. So they need so many people always on the military post. So they'll let some people go out and live off post, but they need to have so many people on the military post at all times. So that's why they only let you go on leave for, certain period of time. They have to check their personnel, see, who's on, do I have enough people to stand watch? If there's an emergency, do I have the required number of people here on post to take care of all the things that need to be taken care of? So these military men and their families, they live on the military post. While they're on the military post, they're all citizens of the United States. But only those enlisted or commissioned as officers are members of the military. So a citizen of the United States, in the Constitution where it says Congress is comprised of members, the wording is a little weird. So it's not that you join Congress and you become member and then therefore Congress is composed of members. You are a member and members may join Congress, and then Congress is made up of members, military members. So you're a member of the military. You can after so many years be a representative, after so many more years be a senator, and then you can be in Congress. So you're a member of the military and you can be in Congress. So then Congress is composed of members. Okay, so it's not like you're nobody, you're a state citizen. You can't be a state citizen. You have to be a citizen of the United States. So you're a member of the military, and then you can become a person who's sitting in a seat of Congress. Okay, that's the way I understand the Constitution. And then if you read the requirements for the president, it kind of clarifies it, and it makes a lot of sense. And a person subject to the jurisdiction thereof, that's a person subject to whether you're at the seat of government, or which is exclusive authority, or you're on one of the military posts, you're under like authority. And what authority does the state have over the military post? So you're subject to that jurisdiction, but you're a person, member of the military, to be in the Congress of the United States or be president of the United States. So I hope that clarifies things a little more. Now I've said it twice in the last few weeks. I've been saying it for a long time on this channel. I come across little gems like this, transfer of citizenship on cession of territory. So the state people who were living on the lands that became the seat of government went from being state to federal, because now they're on federal lands. Now, there are some military posts in this country where people who own the land did not give up their land, even under the laws of eminent domain. They refused to give up their land to the federal government. And so the federal government built a post on top of their land, and they're surrounded by federal lands. And then the federal lands are surrounded by state lands. Okay, so you have a private property, a military post, and then you have the state. And those people became both state and federal people. So you had state people, and then federal state people. It's very rare, but it is something that they've talked about in Congress, in the debates and such, and then pass laws on them. And I think that is one of the things that's really confusing to people out there, because they say, well, I read this, and so I'm a federal citizen. It's not talking about you. It's talking about someone else completely, probably in another state from where you're at, and it has nothing to do with you, and you don't own land on the federal land, so you're not surrounded by federal property and all these other things. So if you're dependent or a spouse of someone in the military, you became a citizen of the United States. But that person is also a citizen of the state. But the federal government is not concerned with citizens of the state because they have no authority over them. That's why you don't really hear too much of them talking about citizens of the states. And so people will say, well, they don't say I'm a citizen of the state. Well, they don't say you're not, okay? They don't say you're not a citizen of the state. And you're saying, but they say this about federal people. Yeah, but you're not a federal person. You're not on the federal lands. They're not talking about you. Well, it says every individual subject to the jurisdiction of the federal government means they're on federal lands, or even if they're off federal lands and they're on duty because they're in the military and under contract to serve. Okay, so yeah, they make it sound like that, but they're talking about a specific group of people, the people in the military or the people on military post or the civilians on military post or people who own private property surrounded by a military post, or the people at the seat of government who became federal but they're not members of the military. So there's a lot going on here, and it's easy to understand why people are confused, but we need to start clarifying this. We need to start clearing it up and helping people understand that you're a state citizen. If you want to be a state citizen and you want to assert your rights, if you're in Texas, you can go to Texas Jurisprudence 3rd edition 1 general subsection 1 statehood, and read that little paragraph there. I've showed it to you on my videos here, and I just went to the law library again and took another picture of the 3rd edition jurisprudence, Texas Jurisprudence, which hasn't changed because it's still the 3rd edition. Okay, so like, share, and subscribe. I hope you understand this video. If you didn't, please comment, ask questions. If I have the answers, I will answer them for you. If not, maybe someone else watching will. People are starting to interact a little bit more in the comments section. Pass it along on whatever social media you happen to be on, and I'll see y'all soon.